Welcome back. It's your boy Fresh.
And I'm Mary, and we are a Co-ople of nerds.
And today we're going to be reviewing the game Trim.
Nope. Terror Below.
You're staring at me.
You want to start over?
No, go ahead.
So, today we're going to be reviewing Terror Below. Terror Below is a game created by, or published by Renegade Games. Its designer is Mike Elliott. It's for ages 10 and up. It's 1 to 5 players. It's approximately 45 to 60 minutes of play. And it's a pick up and deliver game with grid movement. And it's an action allowance with victory points. So in the end, you end up winning based on who gets to 20 victory points the fastest.
Yes, just as a side note, I won both games that we played.
We only played 2 games.
We've only got to play 2 games of this. This is a little outside our wheelhouse. Typically we're co-op family. But so we picked this up at Gencon 2019. And we were standing in line to get Horrified. And we'd saw Terror Below and thought, well, that looks pretty cool. But we just never got a chance to get around to playing it. I think the demos were pretty backed up. And so while we're standing in line for Horrified, we happened to see that the line is just completely gone for the Renegade booth. And I think Mary's like, I'm just going to run over and grab it. And so that's what she did while I waited in line. And finally got it out.
We thought it was going to be a cooperative game, I guess, just based on what we had heard at Gen Con from other people talking.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until we actually went to play the game that we realized it was competitive.
It was competitive, so a little different for us. But this is also, I believe it's my first pick up and deliver game, too. That's not a...
It's not a very common type of game, no.
Yeah, at least not that in our circle. I'm sure there's thousands and thousands of those games, but just not ones that we've played a ton of. But so overall, it's basically it's the movie Tremors in a box. I don't know if they originally tried to get the Tremors IP and maybe it was too expensive, they didn't want to sell. So I do believe this game was originally on Kickstarter, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So I didn't see how the funding went. Maybe they didn't have enough money in the budget, maybe they didn't think they needed it.
I can't imagine that the Tremors IP was terribly expensive considering how many movies they've made.
Yeah, the movies have slightly declined in quality each time.
Yeah.
And I do believe we have the box set. I don't know if we've made it all the way through it, though.
No.
I know I watched the first 2 as a kid a lot.
Yeah.
And then it gets pretty fuzzy after that. I may have seen the 3rd one.
Well, the supporting characters from the first 2 movies end up becoming the main characters in the subsequent movies.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they couldn't afford Kevin Bacon in the sequels. Which is weird that they would charge so much for the IP if that's in fact what happened.
Yeah.
But essentially there's a government experiment gone wrong. Or maybe it's aliens. I'm not entirely sure.
I don't even know that it gives you that much of the story. It's just you are fighting these deadly giant worms and competing against each other who can get the most victory points with fighting these worms or getting struck by them or in their rubble, and also delivering their eggs to specific facilities to earn more victory points based on cards. And so you're competing against each other not just for survival, but to who can get to 20 victory points first.
Right. Essentially, the government has hired a ragtag band of misfits to collect these specimens, and that's how you're getting the victory points. You're delivering it to different facilities, like she mentioned. There's a hospital, a police station,
a motel,
a general store, little locations on the map that and they kind of set these. They have bounty cards where random color eggs at random locations will pop up. There's also bounties for killing specific worms. So if you manage to collect enough weapons via the rubble and want to try to actually just go and fight a worm, they are worth a lot of victory points. So
yeah, you get the bounty card. You get to keep it with the number of victory points on the face of the card.
Mm-hmm. So you essentially get 3 characters to start out. One is your leader. You get to pick. The other 2 are sort of backups. If your leader dies, one of your backups becomes a new leader. Each character has their own variable player powers, which I thought really added to the game a lot. No 2 games felt the same.
Right.
I mean, the first game I had the truck driver, and she was just a monster. If you get the big rig with the truck driver character, I mean, you're cruising at that point, and so that was really cool.
There's even a dog character where you can be a dog that picks up more rubble picks up 2 pieces of rubble at a time rather than just one as an action.
Yeah, so the action point allowance is similar system to Pandemic, but depending on which they have vehicle, you have to play a vehicle card each turn. You always refill your hand to 3. So you get to pick how much movement you want. Higher movement cards cause the worms to come after you. Lower movement cards, you can kind of send the worms to your opponent. So there's some give and take there. You don't want to just play the big cards because all the worms are coming after you. Essentially, you're making more noise, attracting the worms. So the big rig had the most action points given, which was 7. But at the end of your movement, the closest worm is on your space. So if that worm were to surface, you're going to have to fight it.
Yeah, based on the rubble pattern that worm creates. So it will come up out of the ground, and each worm creates a very specific rubble pattern based on its card. And if you're in the path of the rubble or the worm itself, you are going to have to fight the worm.
Right.
And I would say that another interesting component with that is that you get different weapons.
Yes.
You get different weapons, and you get different equipment that you can get from the general store, so that when you do fight the worms, you're fighting them with different sources of power, or I guess ammunition, and also you can kind of amp it up based on your equipment. So you can wear a hat that makes your gun fire to more.
Right. And there's
damage.
also equipment to not only help yourself, but to hurt your opponent. So you can kind of, send, I had like this satellite attack, which if it could hit your opponent, it could kill their main character. And, so yeah, all sorts of equipment.
And I lost all 3 of my characters. That's how I lost.
Second game, she lost all 3 of her characters.
They all died.
And I just won by default on that one. We did only get to play this game with 2 players, which is how we played the majority of our games. I would be interested to see how it plays with a higher player count, either 4 or 5.
The setup is variable based on the number of players, and so the setup is more complex with more rubble and worms in the beginning, the more players that you have in the beginning. So I'd say the board gets a little more crowded with the eggs and the rubble in the very beginning with the more players that you have.
Right. And the other thing is that with 2 players, you could really easily map out where these worms are going to surface.
Yeah.
Most worms take X number of cards, depending on the type of worm, before they surface and attack. So if there's only 2 of you, you kind of just do the math in your head, like, well, she can only play 1 card on that, so I'm fine here, because the queen worm needs 5 cards to surface. Whereas if you're playing with 4 or 5, you may get hit with a worm and never have an opportunity to move at all. So if it only requires 2 cards for it to surface, you know, the next player could go and the player after them could go, and then all of a sudden you got a worm attack and you had no way of getting out of the way.
It allows you to strategize not only to avoid getting damage yourself, but also against your opponent.
Mm-hmm.
So you can put damage on them from the worms.
Right. And that's what I did the second game. I made worms consistently surface when they were close to Mary, so she was having to fight them a lot. I think all of the weapons are single use. You have to discard it after
yes.
you use, so you run out pretty quick. You do get weapons and items primarily through picking up rubble, which is, you know, part of the action point allowance. You kind of make your characters tougher, but if you have to fight, I mean, it's probably going to take 2 or 3 weapons to kill a worm.
Depending on how strong the worm is.
Right. I mean, the queen is going to take 7 to 10.
Yeah, I wasn't even able to even try.
Right. So, you know, but once they fight a worm, even if they're successful the first time, now they've depleted all their weapon cards, so they're sort of left really vulnerable, which I also think would also play into the higher player count, where people are just extremely vulnerable, and maybe there'll be a little more luck with that many players, because I think it would be a little harder to strategize about when these worms will surface and when they won't.
Yeah, I would say our first game we both strategized more on avoiding the worms individually and avoiding the rubble. So we didn't plot against each other as much, and it was a little less competitive. It was just whoever can get to 20 victory points first, kind of in our own space. The second time we played, we were plotting more against each other when we were trying to get the other person, their leader, to die, and then have to go cycle through their characters. And that's how you won.
That's right. So, I guess we could just go ahead and Future Doug can insert the components section here. You're looking handsome, Future Doug. So here we go with components, and you sort of see the general setup of the game. You get a really good picture, or a really good idea of that beautiful board. The asymmetrical, I guess it is still symmetrical, isn't it? Symmetrical left to right, but not top to bottom. So semi-symmetrical. But just like some of the funky edges on it, it's not just a plain old boring square. That's one of the things I love about this game. So let's get a little closer look at some of these components. Here we have the characters that you start off with. Again, you get 3, and you pick one to be your leader, and as they die, you can switch them. You got Dr. Tom, Survivalist Lisa, and then our favorite, Shemp the Farm Dog. So there you go. Good artwork. I enjoy the artwork. It's not too simplistic, but it's not too over the top either. These are the victory points. Just little tokens you get. Nothing too special. Cardboard. Here we go with some weapons. We got here, get these a little closer. The hunting rifle, shotgun, and box of dynamite to blast away those nasty worms. Here's some equipment. We got the seismograph, sonic transmitter, and worm pheromones. Again, same artwork style. I enjoy it. 2 6-sided dice. They got number characters on them instead of lips.
The different colors, so you know the coordinates on the board.
Yep.
Where you're gonna go.
Gotta take out the trash. Let's see. So here are the cards that you play to signify how many action points you get and where you can move the worms to. You can see here this arrow. I guess let me. So each worm kind of has this little targeting chip, so you know where they are and where they're going to attack in the future.
And it lines up on the board with
Right.
the
So
worm under that specific target.
Right. So here is target target one matches target one. So wherever that one is, when this one fills up with cards, this one here needs 2. That means it is going to pop up here, and
With this pattern
right.
of rubble.
So let's just say you were going to play the pickup truck on worm number 1. So you would move this targeting arrow up 1 and over 1. Here the bicycle is left 2. You can't go off the board, so it would just stop here. Now that's 2 cards needed to cause this worm to emerge, so the gray van is going to get blasted and be forced to fight the blaster worm.
And he can use his equipment and weapons to defend himself and fight back.
Right. So here we got our action point allowances where we can move the worm. This text here is sort of a special ability on each card. So you get to play a vehicle card face down as a distraction, so when that worm goes off, it gets like a last second movement. Some have it, again, since this one's a little bit higher with the 6 action points, this ability is bad for you, whereas the bicycle, that one's lower, it can be good for you. Let's take a look at some worms. So up here we got their starting coordinates. You see blue is the vertical, orange is the horizontal, so it starts at find 4, go over to 3, it'll start there. The name, this color denotes the egg color it lays. Here we have the hearts is the number of lives, and the little explosion sign is the number of cards needed for it to emerge. So there's blaster. When it emerges, you will see here there's the egg and the rubble pattern. So if you're anywhere near that plus sign, you're gonna have to fight the blaster. It can hit multiple characters, so this one can theoretically hit all 5 characters, or all 5 players, I'm sorry. Screamer, same thing. This one, you can see there's a different blast radius here. It's a different egg color. That one was purple, this one's a maroon. And then we got Miss Tentacles, again slightly different, blue, different grid where it's kind of like a diagonal, an X pattern. I didn't show you the queen, just to leave that a surprise for you if you pick it up. Here we have the eggs. Got the big beautiful bold colors, and I'm not sure if this will pick it up real great, but you can kind of see it's got a really interesting texture on it, these little spikes. I thought that was a nice little touch instead of just being smooth kind of generic eggs. Awesome colors, I like that. These are the rubbles, or rubble, I'm not sure if you pluralize rubble. They're just little tan pieces of plastic. They serve the purpose. Nothing flashy. Here we got the cars. They are wood and they got paint on them. kind of denote tires and windows. I wasn't the biggest fan of these. I thought I wish they would have been plastic to kind of match, and then you get to paint them how you see fit if that's one of your things that you're into with gaming. Got Jeep there. That's like the Wrangler, an old shaggin' wagon, ready to tag some worms. And I guess that's a Hummer or maybe some sort of military vehicle. Here we have a couple locations. Now you just lay these flat on the board. They're just little cardboard cutouts. Tells you where you can bring some of the eggs to get your rewards, be it victory points or hospital you get to revive a dead character, police you get a weapon, general store you get a piece of equipment. Here are the two different main types of bounties. So this one wants a blue egg delivered to the police station. If you do that, you get 3 victory points. In addition, since it's a police station, you also get a weapon. If this card is not up and you still take a blue egg to the police station and there's no bounty for that, you just get 1 victory point instead of 3. So you kind of want to wait and see what bounties come up, see where you need to take which color eggs. The other type of bounty is, of course, the hunt. So this one, if you kill a screamer with this bounty up, you get 6 victory points. This is literally double what 1 pick up and deliver egg is worth. Again, if you kill a worm without a bounty up, I think it's still 1 victory point, right? Alright. Then my favorite and least favorite parts of the game are, here goes the cardboard cutouts for the worms. I love them. I think that's beautiful art. It's nice, scary, big, bold, powerful. They just sit on the sidelines. You gotta get these guys in the game. There you go. There's another one that's got a big old scorpion tail on it. That's cool. Here's the mother of all worms, the queen. Looking fierce, looking huge. I mean, just compare her to the vehicles in the background. She is massive. She is maybe impossible to kill unless you are very, very deep in the game. If you're anywhere near the beginning, you're done. You probably need 7 to 10 weapons, easy, or equipment. There you have it. There's the components. One last look at that big, beautiful board. Real quick, I forgot to show the other side of this board. So here you can see the canyon, and you can jump it. You need a discard, a card with a 7 or 6 action point movement. So you can discard this to give a chance. You roll a dice. 1, 2, 3, you die. 4, 5, 6, you make the jump. And I believe you get a victory point for that as well. But it adds another level to the game where, you know, if you're here and you need to get to let's just say the police station here, or no, maybe here. Do you go, 'cause you can't move diagonally, do you move all the way around, or do you risk it, jump it, and make it over? Kind of depends what your hand's like, how many 6 and 7s you got, how many character lives you're willing to risk. But I think that adds, that's another fun side to this game. I love 2-sided or double-sided boards. There you go. All right, so report card time.
Okay.
So we do a 1 to 10 scale. 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. Today we have 4 categories. So the first one is components. That one's fresh in everyone's mind. What do you like for components? What do you give it for components?
I would give it an 8.5 for components. All of the components are pretty solid. They're not. I mean, the board is a very thick cardboard board. I mean, it's a good solid board, and the eggs are kind of cool looking. They're colorful, and the cars, the little painted cars that you use, that's your character.
May or may not be wood.
And the little pieces of rubble are they're just like kind of like the little jewels that you might get kind of in other games, but it's just tan colored. So I like the components. I think and I like the worm cutouts that you use that you display around the board that are supposed to be like the worms that you're fighting against. They look really cool. The art on them is really neat.
Yeah, I'm not quite as high as you. Components is flat out the hardest for me to grade. I love the board. I love the asymmetrical nature of it. It's not just the generic square and triangle. It's got all these rock formations. It's double-sided, so you can flip it over and do the canyon side on the back, which lets you do these cool jumps and kind of add more risk reward to it. So I love the board. I love the cardboard cutouts. I love the art on them. I thought they were really well done, beautiful, really pop. I despise the fact that they are not used in the game. You have to. When we played, we kind of forced them in, just because you got these big, beautiful cardboard cutouts. I mean, we all like miniatures better, but cardboard cutouts are still okay.
Yeah.
And it just sits on the sideline.
You don't actually use them in the game. They're just for aesthetics. You just lay them around the board.
Yeah, that just, it feels like a waste. I understand the rock formations or the rubble formations when they surface. I wish they would have incorporated the standees to kind of like whatever squares they cover, that's where they attack, or something else. Having big, beautiful standees that just sit on the sidelines is a big negative for me. I like the cars, I like the eggs, I like the rubble. I like the eggs and the rubble a little bit better. I guess the thing about the cars that was a little off-putting to me is that they appear to be wood.
They are. Kind of like meeples.
Right.
There's a lot of components in games that are made out of wood.
Right. But then the other components are all plastic.
Mm-hmm.
And that just felt, it's like either make them all wood or make them all plastic. I don't know if that makes sense, but I love the big bright colors. All the worm eggs have like a bolder color, whereas the cars tend to have more of a pastel color. So I did like that.
Fits the theme.
Yeah, I did like that contradiction where the worms are the big baddies, bold, and the heroes are a little more pastel and gentle and all that. Being said, I think I'm going to go with 6 for components. Not using the standees. If it didn't have a great board, and then the eggs, I liked how they weren't just generic soft eggs. They got little spikes on them and ridges. I thought that was really neat. Added a lot to it. If it wasn't for that board and those eggs, I really feel like I would have voted way less, and that's why it's so hard. It's like components I love and components I hate crammed together, and I'm trying to find a way to blend them.
So yeah, I like the cutouts of the worms, and that to me adds to the score on components. I think where it takes away for me is in gameplay, because you have these components that you're not really using.
Okay, that makes sense. So next up is
Gameplay.
Gameplay. So again, this was our first pick up and deliver system, and I thought it was again, it's something that was pretty new to us, but I enjoyed it. It was something different. I added a different layer to it. It's like you have goals, and you're not just chucking dice or slinging cards. You're trying to plan out, and there's variables, and you're trying to dodge these worm target tokens, and I thought that was really neat. I would have liked to have seen when the worms emerge, and maybe this is where they could have fit in those cardboard cutouts. Once they emerge, it's like on the board as an additional hazard, so maybe you can fight them more, or send them after your opponent, and then you continue to get new worms in the dirt. But then now you got a worm outside the dirt, and you got worms in the dirt. I don't know if that would have hurt thematic wise, that the worms couldn't really walk around on land. They needed to burrow through the desert.
Yeah.
But it felt a little weird that they kind of come up and go back down. Oftentimes, especially with two players, neither one of us are anywhere near it. They're popping up in the corner somewhere, and
It is random.
We're just going. I mean, you can direct it with the cards.
Yeah.
Direct the targeting arrow. What about you? What do you think about gameplay?
Gameplay, I think that my expectations for the game versus what we actually experienced when we finally did get to play it, I think I had set my expectations a little too high, because I'm going to give gameplay a 6.5. I was a little bit disappointed that, well, I think first of all that it wasn't cooperative.
Well, that you can't blame the game for that. That was our mistake.
Yeah, that was our mistake. But also, I think I was just expecting, not to move ahead to storyline, I was expecting it to be a little more thematic. I guess I've never tried the pick up and deliver type games, so I wasn't expecting that. The first time that we played it, I probably would have scored it lower, just because it didn't seem very strategic. You were just avoiding the worms anytime they popped up. It was it probably gained a few more points the second time we played it, when I realized that it could be more strategic with trying to sick the bad guys against your opponent so that they would die, and then you could earn more victory points. But I also lost, so.
The gameplay for me, I think I'm going to go an 8. And I think this is sort of where the difference between us putting the worm standees into different categories. I like the pick up and deliver aspect of it. I think 2 players, it does suffer a little bit. I think it's going to be a little better 3 to 5. And I'm eager to try that out. Maybe my rating will change. Maybe I'm building it up too much in my head, but I do think with more players, you get more worm attacks. It's a little more chaotic, whereas when we played, it was you knew where the worms were coming,
Yeah.
and
You can
plan
predict
accordingly.
it, typically, unless you have like a distraction card. Which
Yeah,
is where
yeah,
you won't
the upside
but the
down card.
opponent would know, if they're the one that placed the distraction card, they would know the directions on it if they
Right.
remembered it.
Right.
So, but I kind of, not to merge the storyline in with the gameplay, but I guess I didn't see where pick up and deliver. I understand that you're trying to get these eggs to certain facilities because they want to do research on them. Maybe I'm thinking too much about the movie Tremors, where that never actually happened. But the storyline just didn't fit with me. You're just picking up rubble and eggs,
Yeah,
and delivering
picking
them
up
to
rubble
the hospital,
and somehow being able to turn that in for a hat or a gun, that is a little weird. I'm not exactly sure how they would incorporate that otherwise, because unless you're getting
You gotta
victory
have a way
points to get money, and then you could buy a gun or
Yeah.
buy a hat or buy a satellite radar detection. Yeah, so I do see your point there. Yeah, picking up dirt to get it to cash it in is a little odd.
Mm.
So
To each their own.
yeah.
And then storyline.
So story slash theme. We merged the two of these together. Storyline. I mean, you can read the back of the box like I just did, or there's a little couple paragraphs in the instruction booklet. Other than that, there's no story.
Yeah.
None of the cards had like little background on the characters or anything like that. And there are several characters, so that probably would have been overkill to create a backstory for
Right.
how many was it? Like 18?
Yeah,
characters?
I would say
Something like
somewhere
that.
around there.
And of course they, die a drop of a hat. Sometimes literally. But so theme wise, again, this is sort of where I put that whole picking up rubble and cashing it in for an item or a weapon. That seems a little odd to me. Maybe the town is paying you for cleaning up the streets. It seems pretty loose. If there's giant worms out, I think you just give the guy your gun. If he's gonna fight a giant worm, like, here you go, good luck, bring it back if you can, clean it maybe. But I don't. That part lost me a little bit. I do get picking up the eggs, taking the research facility. I guess in my head I kind of had it that there's competing, research companies that all want to, get the big scoop, figure out how to weaponize these things, or figure out how
get the eggs
to
there faster.
Yeah, how they got there, where they came from.
Mm-hmm.
What the scientific process of their genetic mutation. Whatever it is, I kind of see that for theming. The playing the different cars having different action points, action point values. That kind of makes sense that, the boots are worth 2 action points, so you're going to walk slow in boots.
Right, but I don't exactly know how to relate the vehicles to the theme of the game.
Yeah, I think the idea is, no, you're right. Because if you have a working truck, you're not going to drive to one location, leave the truck, hop into another vehicle, and then continue on, like just so on, like where you would. They're just abandoned cars all over this desert.
I think, and this is probably just completely me, like just personalized to me, is there was the expectation versus reality. So I expected the theme to follow more of like the Tremors movie and
for all we know, it followed 3, 4, and 5 to an absolute T.
It could have. It definitely could have. So the picking up eggs and using vehicles to move the worms around, and of course buying equipment with rubble. I guess I couldn't really. I didn't feel like the story was playing out in my head as I was playing the game. Now, I could play the game strategically and follow it just like it's a game with, any other type of components, but I didn't feel like I was in the story.
Right. Yeah. No, I can agree with that. So what's your grade?
5.
5. I was 6. I do see some of it. I see kind of where they were going. I don't want to nitpick it too much. And not all games have, it basically has no story at all. Like I said, a couple paragraphs. I think they could have squeezed a little of that in and help with some of the theming. If it was asteroids coming down to Earth, would it really be that much of a difference than worms coming up?
No.
It feels like you could.
You could have probably fit this game into different themes, and it still would have worked just fine.
So, overall grade?
My overall grade, considering the expectation versus reality, is 6.5.
6.5. I'm a 7, so we're real close. We got there a little different paths, but real close. So now we got a new category we're trying out, which is play, display, or stay away.
Stay away.
So play means you're frequently bringing it out to your game group and eagerly playing it whenever you get an opportunity. Display means it sits on your shelf more than it hits the table. But if you happen to catch Tremors on TNT,
Yeah.
and you want to just mess around with in that
you in
universe
the
a little
mood.
bit, get it out. Stay away just means leave that for someone else.
Yeah.
Where do you go?
I would go with display.
Display.
Yeah. I do like to play it, and it is a really cool looking game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's one that you would have to run away from. It's still kind of cool to play. And I think everybody, a typical gamer would want to at least try it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not something that I'm anxious to play on a daily basis.
Yeah, I'm a display too. I don't want to get rid of it. I'm not disappointed I got it. I'm really eager to try it with a higher player count. But if we're going to play another 2-player game, I would probably look for something else. And I think that's also, kind of our situation where we don't play a ton of games with other people's unless we're at a convention.
It's a limiting factor.
We do play a lot of party. We do have our main game group is much more of a party game group than this, so we need 6 players.
And there is a good deal of variability. If you look in the rule book, there's variability in setup. You can do variability in the actual gameplay itself and with your characters and with the worms.
Right. There's some replay value there.
Yeah, there's replay value there because you can really switch it up a lot to make it new and interesting each time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess we'll go display it on our shelves.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for watching.
Thanks.
See you next time. Bye-bye. Alright, let me sit up so straight.
It feels better on my back. These chairs are really hard.
You ready?
Mm-hmm.